Security drags Black CEO off plane. Then she takes 4BR in funding. From the airline, it was supposed to be a regular flight for the Black CEO, heading to an important meeting that could change the course of her company's future. But as she boarded the plane, she was met with a shocking and unprofessional situation. Security pulled her off the aircraft without explanation. The reason? They claimed it was a routine procedure, but it was clear something more was at play. The woman, calm and composed, refused to let the incident slide, knowing the power she held. After being escorted off the plane, she made a powerful move that no one saw coming. She decided to pull $4 billion in funding from the airline, a move that would shake the very foundation of their business. The airline, which had once been an important partner, now found itself in a crisis, all because of one woman's decision to not back down. In one fell swoop, the CEO's response showed the world that disrespecting the wrong person can come at a huge price. If you enjoyed Amara's powerful story and want to see more inspiring real-life moments, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Extra Story Life for more incredible stories of strength, resilience, and courage. Your support helps us bring more impactful stories to life. And if you have thoughts or questions, feel free to comment below. We'd love to hear from you and continue the conversation. Amara Lawson, a successful and savvy Black CEO, had been at the helm of her tech company for years, steadily building it from a humble startup to a global powerhouse. Known for her sharp business acumen and no-nonsense attitude, she had become a respected figure in the industry, consistently making high-stakes decisions and navigating complex negotiations. Despite her wealth and power, Amara never used her status to gain special treatment or to flaunt her accomplishments. She preferred to remain understated, focusing on the work rather than the recognition. This trait of hers was most evident when she traveled for business. Unlike most CEOs who often travel in luxury and prefer to be treated as royalty wherever they go, Amara would often board a flight as any regular passenger would, dressed simply, blending into the crowd, with no airs of grandeur about her. On this particular day, she had booked a flight for a critical business trip to finalize a major deal with an airline that had been eyeing her company's innovative tech solutions. The deal was poised to propel her business into an even more influential position within the industry, and Amara knew how important this meeting was. As she boarded the flight, dressed in a navy blazer and jeans, she made her way to her seat in first class. Though she had been on countless flights for her global travels, this one felt different. She was on edge, nervous about the meeting but trying to keep her emotions in check. The flight was supposed to be just another chance to relax during her journey, a brief respite from the intense schedules she typically managed. She had always valued these moments of peace, the rare occasions when she could just unwind, perhaps, read a book or reflect on her thoughts as the world flew by beneath her. With the flight taking off and the seatbelt sign switched off, Amara settled into her first-class seat, her mind preoccupied with the upcoming meeting. She glanced out the window, watching the world below shrink as the plane ascended into the sky. But little did she know, things were about to take a dramatic turn, and her experience would soon take a course she never anticipated. She had no way of knowing that this flight would not only change the trajectory of her business, but also become a defining moment for her personally and for the airline involved. As the plane cruised smoothly through the skies, Amara began to relax, her eyes gliding over the documents she had brought along, her mind focused on the negotiations she would soon engage in. Everything seemed normal, peaceful even, and she could feel herself unwinding from the hectic pace of her life. What she didn't expect was the soon-to-come disruption. The flight attendants, who had been busy with other passengers, suddenly became aware of her presence. She was just another anonymous traveler as far as they were concerned, and they treated her as such. Amara didn't mind. It was how she liked it. But then, something shifted. The flight attendants began to act strangely, whispering to each other, casting furtive glances toward her, and acting uncomfortably. Amara couldn't quite place it, but something felt off. At first, she shrugged it off as nothing more than the usual pre-flight jitters that come with managing a busy airline, but the atmosphere quickly grew tense. The tension in the cabin was palpable. Passengers began to notice the unease between the flight attendants and Amara, and some of them even turned their heads, glancing in her direction. It was subtle at first, nothing overt, but Amara could feel the change in the air. Her intuition, honed by years of navigating boardrooms and high-stakes deals, told her that something wasn't right. Her mind raced through possibilities. Perhaps the airline had been experiencing some sort of internal miscommunication, or perhaps there was an issue with the seating arrangements. But nothing had prepared her for what came next. Without warning, one of the flight attendants walked up to her face rigid, her voice laced with a hint of coldness. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to move to a different seat," she said, her tone sharp and dismissive. Amara blinked, taken aback. "Excuse me?" she responded, momentarily confused by the request. "I'm in my assigned seat, and I'm not sure what you mean by that." The flight attendant didn't explain, her gaze hardening. She merely repeated her demand, this time more forcefully, insisting that Amara vacate her seat. "It's policy," she added, her words clipped. "You'll have to move." Amara, still shocked, tried to remain composed. She had no intention of causing a scene or drawing unnecessary attention to herself, but this was clearly a misunderstanding, and she needed to address it calmly and professionally. "I have a confirmed first-class ticket," Amara replied, holding up her boarding pass. "I don't understand what the issue is." But the flight attendant's response was anything but understanding. "I don't care what your ticket says. You'll need to move." The arrogance in the flight attendant's voice made Amara's blood run cold. Something was very wrong here. As the flight attendant stood there, unmoved by Amara's explanation, the tension in the air only escalated. She could feel the eyes of the other passengers on her, watching the confrontation unfold. Some looked uncomfortable. Others whispered among themselves. But Amara knew that this was more than just an argument over seating. She had been in business long enough to recognize when something wasn't right, and this was no ordinary disagreement. The flight attendant's behavior wasn't just unprofessional, it was personal. The words, "move to another seat," echoed in her mind, and for a moment, Amara could hardly believe what was happening. Had she really been singled out like this for no reason other than her race, or the way she presented herself? The thought was infuriating, and she could feel her pulse quicken. She had built her company from the ground up, endured countless challenges, and navigated difficult negotiations. And now, here she was, being asked to move from her seat by a flight attendant, who seemed to think she didn't belong. The flight attendant's tone and behavior felt like an insult, not just to her, but to everything she had worked so hard to achieve. And that was when Amara realized that this wasn't about a seat. This was about respect. It was about her place in the world, her right to exist as who she was without having to apologize or shrink back. Amara Bennett wasn't just another passenger on a flight. She was the CEO of an airline, and if she wasn't going to stand up for herself, who would? Amara's quiet time, which she had been looking forward to on this long flight, was abruptly interrupted when a flight attendant approached her with an odd request. "Excuse me, ma'am, but we need you to move to a different seat," the attendant said, her voice laced with an odd urgency. Amara, clearly confused by the request, calmly asked for an explanation, wondering if it was simply a mix-up with her assigned seating. The flight attendant hesitated for a moment before responding. "There's been an issue with your seat, and we need to reassign it." She spoke quickly, avoiding Amara's gaze as if she was reluctant to make eye contact. Amara, still calm and composed, explained that she had a confirmed first-class ticket, and the seat she was in was the one she had reserved and paid for. Her tone remained polite, but there was an underlying confusion in her voice. She had flown countless times on this airline, and never once had she experienced a situation like this. The attendant, now looking more flustered, hesitated but insisted that she needed to comply with the request. Amara, sensing something was off, pressed for more information, but the attendant gave her no valid reason for the sudden change, only repeating her request with increasing urgency. As the conversation continued, Amara could feel her discomfort growing. She had never been treated like this before. She had always been a respected customer, often flying in first class as a regular business traveler, and had never encountered any issues. Why was this happening now? As the minutes ticked by, she began to feel the tension in the air, realizing that something more than just a seating mix-up was at play. The attendant's behavior and refusal to provide any reasonable explanation only added to her growing unease. Amara had dealt with difficult situations before, whether in the boardroom or in public settings, but this felt different. The flight attendant's insistence on moving her from her seat and her lack of transparency were starting to feel personal, and that was a feeling Amara wasn't used to. It was as though the attendant had already made up her mind about her, assuming she didn't belong in first class, even though she had a valid ticket. Despite the increasing pressure, Amara remained calm, trying to assess the situation with logic and patience. She politely refused to move, maintaining her composure and asking the attendant for more clarity. However, the attendant stepped away for a moment, returning soon after with 2 security officers. Amara's heart sank as the officers approached, their serious expressions not offering any reassurance. One of the officers spoke first, his tone firm, bordering on aggressive. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we're going to have to ask you to move now," he said, his words cutting through the tense atmosphere in the cabin. The tone in his voice, though polite, felt like an ultimatum. Amara's mind raced. What was happening? Why was this escalating so quickly? She hadn't done anything wrong. She was simply sitting in her seat, waiting for the flight to continue. The officers, clearly unaware of who she was, appeared ready to enforce whatever order the airline had given them. They seemed to be blindly following protocol without questioning the situation or seeking clarification. Amara felt a wave of frustration and disbelief wash over her. This wasn't just about a seating issue, it was about respect, assumptions, and the way she was being treated. She had worked hard to build her company, to become the person she was today, and yet here she was, being treated like a troublemaker with no justification. Her thoughts began to swirl as she realized the gravity of the situation. Her identity, her status as the CEO of a global airline, had never crossed the minds of the officers or the flight attendant. She was being treated as though she didn't belong in the very seat she had earned. The situation had escalated so quickly that it was hard for Amara to believe this was really happening. This was not just about a seat. It was about an underlying issue of respect and fairness, an issue that had now become personal for her. Amara's attempts to explain her situation fell on deaf ears. The officers, acting on the flight attendant's request, began to move her from her seat. They weren't gentle, and Amara could feel the growing tension in the air. Passengers around her looked on, some in disbelief, others in confusion. It was like a scene from a movie, and Amara couldn't believe she was the one in the middle of it. "Ma'am, please, we need to move you now," one of the officers insisted, his grip tightening as he tried to guide her out of her seat. Amara stood up slowly, but she wasn't going anywhere without a fight. She knew she had to act decisively. This wasn't just about a seat. It was about her dignity, her rights, and the principle of being treated with respect. Amara took a deep breath, her mind racing. She calmly pulled out her phone, dialed the corporate office of the airline, and explained the situation in a composed voice. "I'm the CEO of a global tech company, and I'm being dragged off a flight for no reason other than the fact that the staff doesn't recognize me." Her voice was steady, but she could feel the adrenaline building inside her. Within seconds, The call was escalated to a senior executive. Amara's identity was confirmed, and the senior executive quickly issued an apology, ordering the crew to stop their actions. But by then, the damage had already been done. The security team had already escorted her down the aisle, and the entire plane was watching the unfolding spectacle. The senior executive on the other end of the phone, realizing the gravity of the situation, immediately took action. He instructed the captain to allow Amara to return to her seat, but Amara had already made up her mind. She wasn't just going to let this go. She demanded a full explanation, but more importantly, she demanded an acknowledgement of the mistreatment. She made a decision that would change everything. "I am withdrawing all of my company's funding from this airline," Amara declared firmly. $4 billion, the deal is off. There was silence on the other end of the phone as the executive realized the consequences of Amara's words. Her company's partnership was a major part of the airline's future growth. Amara, not one to back down, knew this was her moment to take control. The airlines had just made a huge mistake, and she wasn't about to let it slide. The crew, the captain, and the airline executives were all now on alert. They had crossed a line, and Amara had just used her power and influence to take away something that had taken years to build. The shock waves would be felt for months to come, not just by the airline, but by the industry as a whole. Amara's decision sent a ripple through the airline industry. Word spread quickly, and news outlets picked up the story. The airline, embarrassed, and now without a major partnership, scrambled to do damage control. Behind the scenes, they worked tirelessly to repair their relationship with Amara, offering public apologies and promises to reevaluate their practices and customer service policies. But Amara wasn't looking for apologies. She was looking for change. Her actions had sent a powerful message. No one, no matter how big or small, should ever be treated like she had been. And in that moment, Amara had reclaimed her dignity, her power, and her role as a leader in the business world. In the end, the incident proved to be a turning point, not just for the airline, but for Amara herself. She used this challenge to continue advocating for equality, respect, and fairness in every industry she touched. For viewers, Amara's story serves as a powerful reminder that standing up for yourself is often the best way to create change.